Hello, I'm Reverend Barry Moultrie, and wanted to just spend a few minutes talking to an old friend, a young lady that grew up in this church, her sister, and her parents. I remember watching them run around here and being all stars all through high school. They left, went away to college, and now she comes back. And I'm not going to say anything else about her. Let me ask you to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started in a conversation.
Okay. My name's Meredith Hill. I grew up in this church. My parents still attend this church. And I am the owner of Meredith Hill Law, located in downtown Silver Spring. My firm practices estate planning as well as works with small businesses. And so I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about estate planning.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And so you may have guessed it. We're going to talk a little bit about wills and estate planning. And so I want to just share with you, Meredith, in this environment, we have been hit with so many deaths. And we find that so many of these people were unprepared, had done nothing. And so the families that are left behind are struggling to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot I'm sure you could say to try to help them figure that out, but the reality is the best method is to plan so that they don't get caught in this. And so people like me, how do we get started? What is the first thing we do to try to plan? I mean, I've done preparations to make sure I've got insurance and I've got some things set aside for my family. But if I don't have anything in writing, it looks like I'm in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what do we do to start off?
So I think a good thing is to watch something like this where you learn about the basics of estate planning and why it's important. And then after that, then seek a lawyer to assist you in drafting your important documents that you need to give you control over what happens after you pass away. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I think is just understanding what an estate plan is, because a lot of times what I have realized based on my own personal experience is I didn't really know what estate planning was. People hear the word estate and you think it's like pertains to large houses and mansions and rich people. I'm like, why do I need this? But everybody needs an estate plan because everybody has an estate. So just to break it down, an estate is everything that belongs to you. So your cars, your bank accounts, the clothes in your closet, your furniture, your silverware, all the stuff that you use on an everyday basis is part of your estate. And when you leave this earth, you cannot take it with you. And so it's important that you have a plan about what happens to all of your belongings, your estate, when you are no longer here. So I think understanding that basic concept is a good foundation to start.
Okay, so perfect. Let me just ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just an everyday guy. I don't have a lot of money in my bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a large savings account and trust funds and all of those things. My cars are paid for, they're probably not worth a whole lot of money. So, I mean, can I, as a regular guy, but does it matter for me to plan for an estate?
Yes, because you are going to leave all of that behind. So, like your bank accounts and your cars, even though they're paid for, you want to give that to someone else. You don't want that to just sit in the bank and have it go through the court process to figure out who is going to get it. You want to be able to have control over your belongings after you pass away. Because after you're gone, you still have people here left that are left grieving and mourning and have to deal with your property and your belongings after you go. And the more that you prepare in advance, the easier it is for them. So If you don't have a plan, you're just dragging out the grieving process for your friends and family. And a lot of people come to me and they say, like, I'm a regular guy. I don't have much. What do I need an estate plan for? But you really do have a lot more than you realize. And what I've been telling my clients over the past 7-8 months is this is the perfect time to sit in your house and really take inventory of what you have. And really just think about, like, oh yeah, I have these pictures that I want to give to my grandchildren. I have these books that I want to give to my son. And no one would know that but you. And it's not good enough to say, oh, well, they're going to figure it out, because they won't figure it out. All they'll do is fight. And so it's a lot of heartache, and you can prevent that by having a plan.
So let me ask you this. I've got a couple of insurance policies. Mm-hmm. My wife is the beneficiary on one, and my children are the beneficiaries on another one. If that's all worked out, does a plan, what else I think I have everything covered with that. Mm-hmm. Is that sufficient, or is there taxes they have to pay on that or something if I don't do something properly?
So that's just a small part of the plan. So having those documents, so like your life insurance plan, retirement plans, having your beneficiaries designated is essential for those to pass straight through to that person and not have to go through the court system. The goal in estate planning is to try to avoid court as much as possible, and going to court prolongs the grieving process. So it's good to write down with an attorney all of your property and who you want it to go to. So it's not just about your bank account and your retirement accounts. It's also about all of the possessions in your house, and you have way more than you realize. And that's just one aspect of estate planning, is the will. But there's also other aspects, such as like your financial power of attorney, as well as a medical directive, which helps people make decisions on your behalf, and you can make decisions on your behalf if you are physically and mentally unable to do that. So a good estate plan is comprehensive and has all different documents and not just a will. But a will is a great place to start.
Okay, so before I move away from this, I want to ask one last question, I think, in this area. I love this church. Mm-hmm. I've been here for more than 30 years. And we have a mortgage, and we're looking to do something to pay off that mortgage here. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me that I want to tithe with my insurance policy. Mm-hmm. And so I want to designate a percentage of my insurance to go to the church. Mm-hmm. And can I do that? Do I just with the insurance company, or is that a part of my estate plan?
So depending on what exactly you want to do, I would advise you to work with your attorney and possibly a financial planner to get this, to make sure you do it properly. But yes, you can definitely leave a certain amount of money through your insurance policy to a church, any nonprofit, or any other organization that you want to. And that's another part of planning that I'm glad that you brought up, is that you don't have to give your stuff to people. You can donate it to charities, or you can sell all of your property in an estate sale and give all of that money to a church or whatever. And without a plan, you won't be able to do that, because no one will think to do that for you. And so having that plan gives you control over what part of your estate or what part of your money, or in your case, an insurance policy, goes to Mount Calvary, because people might not know that you wanted to do that.
Okay. So let me move away from that for a minute. And I keep hearing this term, executor. Mm-hmm. As a part of an estate plan, I have to designate somebody to kind of take responsibility for making things happen. Is that what the executor does?
So the executor, which is also known as a personal representative, is the person that is in charge of taking over your will and making sure it's probated properly after you pass away. So they're literally the person that takes your will to the Register of Wills in whatever county you live in and lets them know that you've passed away. And they're the ones that's going to make sure that everything that's put in your will is followed. A lot of people, it can be a big task for a lot of people. And so that's why a lot of people hire probate attorneys to handle it, because it can be a lot. But some people manage without hiring an attorney. But yeah, they're the person that takes over after you pass away.
So one of the things that I think we see in this church environment is people have left someone in charge of making things work that isn't really equipped to do this. What can we say to people to encourage them to really think about who that person is?
So that's a really good point that you make, because I get a lot of clients that say, oh, I want my firstborn son to do this, but he's not really responsible. But he's going to get mad if he doesn't get picked. But you need to put the feelings aside. And a lot of times they're not going to see this document until after you pass away, and then you won't really have to deal with it. You won't be here. You'll be up in heaven enjoying life, or enjoying afterlife. And so just really think hard about who you want your personal representative to be, because you want that person to be responsible, because it is a big undertaking that they're taking on. So you want someone who's responsible, someone who you can trust, and who can manage handling your probate after you pass away.
Okay, so you mentioned health care, medical rights and those things. A lot of families now have found themselves not being able to visit their loved ones in the hospital in intensive care, but doctors are saying that, hey, they've reached end of life, they've reached that point, and you need to make a decision. And then there's the fight over who makes that decision. Isn't there a form at the hospital that you do, and does that override what happens in your estate plan?
So, yes, they have a form at the hospital, just a generic advance directive that you can fill out, and that's the form that you make decisions about your health care before you reach a level of incapacity where you can't make decisions for yourself. But a lot of times when you are given that form, you're giving it really quickly, and they're just like checking it off the list of things to give you. No one's really explaining it to you. The nurse who probably is giving it to you is a nurse and not a legal professional that can ask you questions about it, or you can ask them questions about it. They're just giving it to you because that's what their supervisor told them to do. And a lot of times when you're in the hospital in that situation, you might you might be in pain. You might be worried about like who's going to take care of your kids when you're away, who's going to pay the medical bills. You might not mentally be all the way. You might physically be present, but your mind might be elsewhere, and so you might just be signing whatever. And we don't want to make decisions, especially important decisions about our healthcare, when we're in an emotional state, because when we're in an emotional state, we don't make good decisions. We're not wise. So it's better for you to make these decisions when you are clear-minded and level-headed and have had time to really think and ponder on what decisions you want to make.
So I think I've got two more questions I want to ask you. First one, parents of minor children. Can custody be addressed in an estate plan?
Yes. So I recommend that anybody that has a kid under the age of 18 have a will, because the will is the document that's going to address guardianship of your child. Without that, you are going to have to go through the court system, and it might not end up the way you want it to end up. And you don't want your child already who's grieving about your passing to then end up in the arms of someone who doesn't really care about them, or who might or end up in foster care. That's just going to make the grieving process even harder for that child.
So I said two more questions, but you just prompted something, so I'm going to hold that last question for a minute.
Okay.
But so scenario, this young lady's baby daddy is the biological father of this minor child, and now she goes in the hospital. She has a fatal illness or what have you, and if she does nothing, the courts are going to try to assign custody to this father,
Yes.
who this young lady knows just isn't the best thing for this minor child, and she wants her parents to do that. How much credence does the court give to those documents over this biological father?
So it's given a lot of weight to have a will that says, I want my parents to take my child if I pass away, rather than the father of the child. Now, the father of the child is biologically the father and has a right to step in and make an argument, but it really helps the deceased mom if there is a document in her that she signed and witnessed and notarized that says, I want my parents to do this. And she can even explain why in the will. That would even help the judge make that decision.
Oh. So wait a minute. If she explains why, and she talks about a drug habit or some gambling problems, something that might not be completely legal, is she putting this person at jeopardy?
Well, I think in that situation, she would just be explaining why she doesn't trust him and why he might not be in the picture at that current time. As it relates to criminal charges that might come about because of that, I can't say 100%. But I think that should be the least of someone's worries. I think you making plans for your child should be at the forefront.
Okay. So I think my last question is, if we watch this video and we think none of that matters, none of that pertains to me, and I get it wrong. We've seen CNN, we see the charts, and we see the COVID line going up almost straight now. And we don't see end in sight right now. And so any of us could get exposed at any moment and be in intensive care within a matter of days. If we did nothing and we have nothing, I don't want you to try to scare people, but I want you to kind of give us a sense of how difficult it could be for your loved ones after you're gone.
So I would start with before you're gone, if you're in the hospital with COVID, and like you said earlier, people are having to make decisions for you about end of life care and what that looks like for you. So you already your family and friends are already in a grieving situation, and you're making it even harder for them to figure out what they want to do with you. And like I said before, making decisions based on emotions is never good. And these decisions are going to be based out of nothing but pure emotion. So that's what that would start without having a plan, and you're in the hospital, end of life care, you're already starting fighting bad blood within your family and friends and making it hard from the get-go. Dying without a will means that the state or the District of Columbia, their laws would take over of who would get your belongings. And each state has a set of rules that governs what happens. And these are very complex rules, and it may not look the way you want it to look. So the property or the belongings that you might want to give to someone else, they might end up in the hands of your parents who you don't maybe have a relationship with. Or, for example, like you mentioned, the mother whose child's father is not in the picture. That child will most likely go to the father who's not a great influence and has never really been in the picture. And right now, the courts, your estate would definitely have to go through the court system. And the courts are very, very behind right now. They were closed for months. The DC courts, I feel like I didn't get communication with them for at least 6 months. And they're just now getting cases back on their docket. And I just had a case the other day where we had to schedule a trial out for September of 2021. So if you have to go to the court system, you're not looking to have your estate settled until 2021, 2022 at the earliest. And again, that prolongs that grieving process for your friends and family that you leave behind. And you just don't know what's going to happen to your property. It can just end up anywhere, given the laws of whatever state you live in.
So Meredith, I've heard everything that you said, and I can appreciate all of this information, and you've convinced me that I need to do something. Mm-hmm. How do I know who to trust to get this done?
I would recommend a licensed attorney who practices this type of law. One that knows what they're talking about. And I would start there. So I would recommend myself as a resource. And you can just mention that you watched this video, that you're a member of Mount Calvary, and I'd be happy to give you a complimentary consultation about this and give you more information about estate planning and see what we can do for you.
So listen, thank you very much for your time. And listen, you guys that were watching this, I hope and pray that this has in some way touched you and helped you to understand the importance of planning your estate so that you make this transition as easy as possible for your loved ones. None of us are looking to die. None of us are looking forward to dying, but it is an inevitability. The Bible says clearly that man born of a woman one day will surely die. And if we don't plan, if we don't prepare, then we set our children and those that we leave behind up to suffer needlessly. Meredith, thank you so much. And I hope and pray that you get some takers. I hope you get phone calls of people that really want to do something in planning their estate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for having me.